Hi everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to be making a super easy, no kneading required loaf of bread. In Danish we call it knædbrød, which is basically like a rustic country loaf. The best part is you only need 6 ingredients. One of them is water. Let's get started. We're going to start by adding 500 milliliters, which is around 2 cups of water, to a large mixing bowl. The water should be lukewarm in temperature. Next, I'm going to add in the yeast. Today I'm using instant yeast. If you're using active dry yeast, you would want to add this to the water, add the sugar as well, and then let it sit for about 10 minutes to activate it. With instant yeast, you don't need to do that. You can just add it straight to the bowl. So I'm doing 2 teaspoons of instant yeast. Next, I'm going to add a tablespoon of sugar, 100 grams of whole wheat flour, 500 grams of bread flour or all-purpose flour is fine too. Then I'm adding in 2 teaspoons of salt. Now that all the ingredients are combined in the mixing bowl, I'm going to stir it with a wooden spoon just until everything has combined and there aren't any dry spots remaining. This is what the dough should look like at this stage. Now that the ingredients are roughly combined, we're going to cover this bowl and set it somewhere warm to rise for 30 minutes. The dough has rested for 30 minutes, so now we're going to use a technique called a stretch and fold. The stretch and fold technique is basically taking 4 quadrants of the dough and folding it over itself, and that helps to develop the gluten in the bread. I just wet my hands by running them under the tap really quickly, and then I'm gonna take the top quadrant of the dough, lift it up, and then fold it towards myself. And then I'm gonna repeat with the 3 other quadrants of the dough. But I like to turn the bowl so that I'm always folding the dough towards myself. So just reaching under, lifting it up, and folding it over. And that's it. Now that we've completed the first stretch and fold, the dough is going to rest for another 30 minutes. The dough's been resting for another 30 minutes, so let's do a second set of folds. This time we're going to cover the dough and let it rest for 15 minutes. The dough has finished resting for 15 minutes, so now we're going to pre-shape the loaves of bread. I am going to make 2 loaves of bread today, but you can also make 1 large loaf. Okay, I have a clean work surface. I'm just going to add a little bit of flour and then tip out the dough. So like I said before, I'm going to make 2 loaves, so I'm going to divide this in half. Just gonna make sure I have some flour on my hands, and then I'm taking the first loaf and just pinching in the sides to make it more round, essentially. Okay, this is nice and round now, so I'm going to flip it over so the seam is down, and then repeat with the second half. Both loaves are pre-shaped, so I'm taking a damp, clean dish towel and covering them for 10 minutes. Now that 10 minutes have passed, we're going to actually shape the loaves. I'm essentially repeating the same process as the pre-shaping, just being a little bit less gentle about it. So I'm gonna flip over each loaf, pinch it together, and then put it on a sheet of parchment paper. The goal of this process is to create surface tension so that your loaf rises properly. I'm just transferring the loaf to the parchment paper, seam side down. Repeat the same steps for the other loaf. I just transferred the loaves onto a baking sheet. These are going to go rest in the fridge for 20 minutes. I'm gonna bake the bread in a Dutch oven, so it's going to be 1 loaf at a time. If you're not using a Dutch oven, you can just have 1 sheet of parchment paper and leave it on the baking sheet to the fridge. There's about 10 minutes left of time for the dough chilling in the fridge. I'm going to preheat my oven. I'm gonna put the Dutch oven in the oven to preheat as well. I'm setting the oven to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're not using a Dutch oven, you want to put a baking dish or a roasting dish that's at least like a few inches deep and put that onto the bottom rack of the oven to preheat along with the oven. I just grabbed one of the loaves. Before we bake it, we're going to add some flour and then score it. I'm baking the loaves separately, but if you're doing this on a baking tray, just repeat these steps for both loaves and bake them on one tray. I'm gonna score this at a 45-degree angle, about 1 inch into the dough. I'm gonna be very careful when I'm dropping the bread in and adding the lid. And then this is going in the oven. The bread's gonna bake for about 20 minutes with the lid on, then I'm going to take the lid off and it's gonna bake for another 5 to 10 minutes. If you're not using a Dutch oven and you're just using a baking sheet, you'll still have that preheated deeper pan at the bottom of the oven. And what you wanna do is have some boiling water at the ready. So start a kettle when you're preheating the oven as well. And then after you've put in the baking sheet with the loaves, you're going to carefully pour about 2 cups worth or so of boiling water into that baking pan that's on the bottom. And then close the oven as quickly as you can, and that basically creates steam inside the oven and will help it get a really nice crust. If you're not baking it in the Dutch oven, you don't even have to take it out, just leave it in another 5 to 10 minutes. The second loaf going in. The breads are going to cool down for at least 45 minutes before we cut into them. The bread has now cooled, so let's slice into a loaf. Hard to beat fresh baked bread with a layer of butter. So good. We love this bread and we make it all the time. Let us know if you tried this recipe and see you next time. Bye! Today we're going to be making a super easy, no kneading required